And I think everybody will have to do something different. We cannot just keep doing business as usual and then expect things to change.
That was the longest break in urbcast history. I haven't done such a long break before. It was around 2 months, or actually more, it's almost 3 months. The last episode was released in the beginning of December, but that was a very needed break, and there were multiple reasons for that. But it's finally here, so welcome to the 5th season of the podcast, which is about cities, urbanism, landscape, urban planning, architecture, and any other cities-related topics. And in this first episode in English, because that's a bilingual podcast, and last week I've published an episode in Polish, but this time in English, as you listen to that, we'll continue the thread from the last season and talk about Living Places experiment, or a prototype, which is a very interesting, lightly constructed project here in Copenhagen, which was done or commissioned by VELUX. VELUX is a very renowned Danish roof window manufacturer who is actually trying to influence the architectural market and raise the ambition bar for how we design, especially and in the terms and in the midst of the climate crisis. How do we make our buildings more sustainable? How do we raise the quality of that as well? So today we're going to talk about how to change the status quo from windows to healthy and quality living. My guest today is Lone Feifer, who is bringing a lot of experience because over 25 years of working with VELUX architecture team. She's now the director of the Sustainable Architecture Department at VELUX. And we'll discuss both Lone's and the firm's role in the architectural sector, as well as Lone's credo, which is about user experience times quality times value results in sustainable buildings. More in the discussion with Lone, which I really enjoyed, and I hope that you will also like it. If you do, please let me know about it. You can visit the website or comment that episode at different streaming platforms or YouTube. You will find the links in the description of the episode. Welcome to the newest episode and season of urbcast. Lone, welcome to urbcast.
Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you for the invitation.
We've already been discussing that you have been to Poland many times, and you are also educating some of the Polish colleagues about this project as well, the Living Places. And I hope that this discussion will be also inspiring to some architecture students, some younger architects in Denmark, in Poland, or in different countries, because there are a lot of people listening to this podcast from many different countries. And to set the scene and start, I'm very curious in your career and the development. You've been now at VELUX for over 25 years?
Almost. September, it will be 25 years.
Almost 25 years. And when you think of VELUX, you might not think of architecture, actually. That was my kind of first thought when I got to know about the project here. But yeah, can you tell the listeners something more about your background and your transition and you starting as an architect and then working more with what you work now?
I'll be happy to. And for those of you who are listening in from Poland, I'll start by saying bardzo mi miło.
Bardzo mi miło.
Yes, I traveled quite a bit in my early years in VELUX. I traveled quite a bit in Poland. Actually been in most places in Poland, and it was quite interesting. We did lectures and cooperations with universities, and we came up with an idea that we should invite a student from a Polish architecture school to come and do an internship in Denmark at VELUX. And it was very interesting, and I discovered that going to the Polish universities, which are polytechnical institutions that we do not have in Denmark. Here we have separately the engineering part and the architecture part. So I was educated myself as it was an artistic academy back then. Of course, we do know some technical things, but my experience was after graduating that I had to go and learn a lot of the technical background and programming and so on of buildings and construction on site, which I did working in offices and on building sites. And I did that the first 6 years of my career. Then I started in VELUX. And then going to Poland, I really found that the education was so much more encompassing, much broader, and actually on a completely different level. I was very impressed.
Higher or lower?
Higher. First of all, you had the whole technical spectrum, but at the same time with a very specific artistic nerve. I found some amazing graphical approaches and skills. So that was very convincing. So we came up with this idea that we could invite Polish architecture students to come and do an internship at VELUX every summer as part of a competition amongst students for their best semester project. It was cooperation with a professor. And the first one was Eva Bieweczka, who is now living in Stockholm with her French husband and her kids. And then came many more. I just mentioned Magdalena Stefanovic, who is now graduated also in Sweden, and she is back at VELUX.
You practice pronouncing Polish names and surnames.
I try. I can order tea in Poland. We are currently enjoying herbata. And I can also offer some coffee and pay for it, actually, but that's about it.
It's still odd because Polish is a pretty difficult language. So is Danish. I'm getting there, but it's very hard. And this story about Poland and VELUX is actually a surprising start to this discussion. I didn't think that Poland will play a role here, but as myself, I'm Polish. I need to say that I've heard about VELUX before, also before moving here to Copenhagen and to Denmark. However, I've never would associate VELUX with such a project as we are sitting in right now, which is Living Places experiment, because simply VELUX is working mostly with windows, with light and wind. Can you say how did it happen that you yourself, you've been working a lot with architecture over the years, over the decades actually?
Yes, I have and we have, because it's definitely a we company. I started working in VELUX in what was at the time not even called the architectural department. It was called the technical department. And I was employed by an architect who was quite a fantastic person. He was 65 at that point, and he had been visualizing the impact of VELUX products in architectural projects. And so to say, engaging and teaching and disseminating the impact of the VELUX windows with colleagues, but also on the different markets. One of them was Poland. He also traveled a lot to China. And he had been in VELUX for, I think at that time, maybe 25 years as a fact. And he had formed this department. Then I took over as manager of the department after him. And we then called it the architectural department. And I have had a lot of fantastic architects as colleagues during my time in VELUX. And there are also at the different markets where VELUX is present, architects employed. And I think it's quite rare, but probably has to do with one thing is the fact that our products are best understood as a space, not as hardware, not as 4 pieces of wood with a glass pane in between, but more about the way they work, the impact it has on architecture. And the second thing is that there is a very strong DNA in VELUX to work with not only the product, but also to try and lean further, in particular, working with architects and engaging into the building industry.
So you had kind of small architecture studio within the company. That's very convenient. And definitely, I would like to talk about VELUX and your projects and the intersection of architecture. Would you say that when VELUX is developing project as Living Places, or actually another project that I also want to discuss in some time, which is LKR Innovation House, transforming over demolishing. What's VELUX role actually? Is it like materials producer, or is it collaborator, or is it actually client?
We are client, of course, in the case of LKR Innovation House, where we are transforming existing wooden warehouses that were built in 1995 today into our new innovation center. Quite a large project, more than 12,000 square meters. And we've held an architect competition to find the best proposal, which we have. The architects are Praxis and the engineers are Søren Jensen. And this project is going to complete next year and be quite a fantastic display of what our products can do in existing buildings. But also, most importantly, it will center all the innovation people working in Jutland. And they will have a completely different work surrounding. So it's a project that we do for ourselves, but we use it also to demonstrate how you can transform over demolishing. In that case, yes, we are a client because it is our own project. In the case of living places, it is more that we are a client because we have to, if we want to show how it can be done. We want to actually lead the way and pioneer climate and nature action in the building industry. And to do that, it's not enough to do a PowerPoint. You have to actually show it. And that's what we have done with living places. But it's important to underline that we don't expect that we will be building it more than this once. We built the prototype and we have made the investment. And then together with our partners, Effect Architects and Atelier Engineers, we are pursuing how we can disseminate this into the building industry and try and accelerate the transition that we all have to do much, much faster.
Let's discuss the production and the design chain, or the building chain in general, construction chain, because it was quite surprising to hear that VELUX is a client for such a project, because I would associate VELUX with provider. So it would be somewhere towards the end of the value chain once the client is requesting a project and the architect is drawing that. So towards the end, we have all the materials which VELUX could provide. So somehow it's twisted now. It's the other way around.
True.
Was that on purpose, or you just started exploring how can you express yourself more and then also have bigger voice?
Very good observation. And you're absolutely right. It's quite atypical. We are a supplier. That is who we are. We produce roof windows and we see ourselves as providers of health and well-being to people and planet with daylight and fresh air. That is the purpose we have. And we do that with the products that we sell, which is anything through the roof, daylight and fresh air, any kind of roof, any kind of building. But at the same time, in our DNA, we have, can you say, an innovation appetite that we have. I think it stems back from actually our founder, who always said that one experiment is better than 1,000 expert assumptions. And if we want to show the potential and the impact that our products can have on a building, we have been cooperating for more than 20 years in more than 30 demonstration projects in 22 countries to try and show examples and experiment and also monitor buildings in use. It's new build, it's existing buildings, so we have a huge portfolio of examples. But looking at this portfolio in 2020, we also realized that with the speed we need to have in order to meet the climate targets that we all need to meet, it's no longer enough to do it from one building to the next, to the next, to the next. You have to sort of approach it in a different systemic way. And that's why we sat down together with the Effect and Atelier and elaborated. We spent 2 years to elaborate a concept for low carbon, healthy homes. And that's what we're sitting in. We're sitting in the prototype. And it's meant as an inspiration. It's meant as a catalog. It has different solutions and angles and materials and colors. So people can come and take inspiration. And we also share a lot of the knowledge, actually. It's an open source project.
So it is also a big investment. I was wondering, because you could display how windows and other products work through maybe one house, but you decided to build 7 of those. We are discussing still about the Living Places project. So where is this ambition coming from? I've been through the VELUX sustainability ambitions on the website, and of course it looks very impressive on paper. Could you elaborate how would you integrate those ambitions to a project like this, through a project like this, but also to your own ways of producing materials?
We built it as a small village. It has 7 houses altogether. And we built it because it was also clear to us after many years of working with demonstration buildings that you cannot only talk about only the house, the home. You have to see what is just next door, what is outside. If we need to make smaller homes, then you have to have facilities for sharing, having a big dinner or co-working or stuff like this. You have to be able to go outside your home and know what is in the immediate vicinity of that. So that's why we sort of build it as a community, because that was also a key part. It became even clearer after Corona that it's not just about the 4 walls. It's also about what is just outside those 4 walls. And going into building prototypes the size of this is linked or anchored in the very strong sustainability targets that we have. And one of those is with the company and the footprint we have, where we have some ambitions on actually accounting for our historical CO2 footprint, which is very, very unusual for companies. And that's a cooperation with WWF. And then there are our products. And that's where we work to halve the CO2 footprint from 2020 to 2030 of our products, cutting it in half. And we're talking aluminium and steel and glass, so it is not done overnight.
How is that going? It's very ambitious.
It's going okay, but you can't say that it is walk in the park for sure, because over 90% of the footprint of our products is outside our own ownership, what you call scope 3. So it is with our suppliers and our cooperation partners. Scope 1 and 2 is what we can account for and immediately impact, but scope 3 is what is with, for instance, those who deliver glass to us or deliver steel or deliver aluminium. And that is a huge task, which we are very dedicated to.
And do you have a leverage to demand that from your suppliers? And isn't it also getting more expensive?
That's the whole balance, because again, with sustainability in buildings, it's something that we all know that we have to work with and achieve, but nobody wants to pay more if things have to be sustainable. People say they do, but in effect, they don't. So to have a window which is half the CO2 footprint, you have to do that actually more or less within the traditional market price. And the same with buildings. That's also why we show how of course, our windows are part of the solution. But VELUX windows is not a big part of a building like this. There are other elements and building construction that weigh a lot more. So it's back to the systemic approach. We are part of the solution, and we can see that we have to do something. And it's not enough to just think it. You also have to act on it.
That was a good point, that actually your products wouldn't account for a big part of the building. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in the Living Places project that I will definitely add the link to, because we are mentioning a lot and it's important to see it as well. And it's hard since this is a podcast, but is it only the roof windows that are produced by VELUX?
Yes.
So everything else that we are seeing here, like all the wood and basically everything, all the other windows, everything that is part of this house is provided by someone else. But it's still you who demand that all of those will comply to your own ambitions.
Yes. Exactly.
How is that being done?
Well, through very, very meticulous scrutiny by our engineers and architects, Effect and Artelia. They have been looking at every kind of product. Okay, this wood, where does it come from? How is it sourced? How is it stored? What is the lifetime? The same with the walls, the floors, and the foundations, and the roofing, and all of that. Because there's no one supplier in the building industry that is big enough to be able to deliver the solution on their own. It's very systemic. We all have to work together. One thing is the building, and then there are the architects and engineers. So we try to make it simple and share a lot of the knowledge and try to explain it also to a lot of people to make, for instance, life cycle analysis very transparent. Of course, it has a lot of decimals, but, well, so does the weather report. I mean, I don't know exactly what is behind a weather report, but I can read it. So we're trying to get to the same place with the LCA.
It's a topic I would like to develop even further. Speaking about DNA of VELUX and your own as well as an architect and one of the pillars of the development of architecture within VELUX, where is this inspiration coming from? So do you think that Danish society or maybe people that you are in touch with, maybe that's a bit easier scene to set, are you more aware of the climate than, for example, maybe in some other countries? So that's why you really want to act? Or is it something embedded especially in the company itself? Or is it inspiration coming from outside, from some other countries?
That's a really interesting question. I guess one thing is the company and another thing is the country. Maybe it's maybe you have to look at it at least as separated. VELUX as a company, we are almost 12,000 colleagues. So it's important for me to underline that this is a team effort. We are a lot of people working on this. Not all 12,000, of course, but many good colleagues are working on this. And there, I think it's clear that VELUX has innovation in its DNA. Coming back to the founder who invented and started VELUX back in the 40s. And this DNA and way of thinking and appetite for innovation, that's something that is prevalent in the company. Also a reason for why I'm still working in VELUX after 25 years. And there is another value that I'd like to mention, namely courage. Ever since I started, I had the clear impression that if you have a vision and want to try something and have an idea, then you are actually given the possibilities to try and test it. And that is, I think, very unique. Maybe in other companies as well, but I have not met it yet, at least for the country. And what does it mean that we are in Denmark? That's a really good question. I was in Austria last week having a talk at an architectural festival. And Austria used to be the country we all looked at talking about sustainable buildings. That's where it started back in the 80s. They were true pioneers back then. And I was excited to see where they were now. But I have to say that I think in Denmark we have moved. We are further because we are able to put a number on, for instance, LCA. We have it in our legislation, first country in Europe. And I was showing it to some of the Austrian architects, you know, that we have best practice cases and we can show how is it sustainable in terms of footprint. And they were like, oh, we wish we had that, because they are just talking about it. And as long as you just sort of mention it, it doesn't get the same respect. So maybe Denmark is ahead of the curve in this sense, at least.
Yeah, I was curious about that because when you think of Copenhagen or Denmark, definitely there are meccas for sustainability of different sorts. However, Copenhagen announced that it's going to be carbon neutral by 2030. And after a couple of years, it was announced that actually will not manage to meet the goal. And there was some backlash because the ambition was so high. And if Copenhagen is a role model for sustainability, there's something is not right if it's not meeting it. I was just curious if there is some sort of maybe willingness to collaborate more across disciplines or across borders. And I'm also wondering about you as VELUX. Are you willing and are you open to collaborate? Because you said that this is kind of open source. So this is for everyone that wants to build on that to get the information and data and maybe develop it further. What ways of collaboration would you implement in your work so that you could reach that sustainability in a way? Like, would you also talk to your competitors, other manufacturers, and say, oh, let's try to do it together. Let's try to inspire each other.
actually in the knowledge. I like to talk about the recipe for this. When people come to see it, we have the ingredients list is hanging outside the houses here, where you can go and see exactly what is it made of, what's inside. And there is also, maybe we can include that in the show notes, there is a virtual tour where people can go in and they can have a look around inside and also outside, and they can see the whole premises. So it's very detailed. We share knowledge with those who would like to pioneer. We have done a lot of agreements already with people in the construction industry who would like to also work on minimizing the footprint. We have also been copied, and we take that as a compliment. There's been I think we are now over 9,000 professionals who have been inside to see the houses. And one of them was kind enough to send us a picture and say, well, we have worked, we thought it was fascinating that you have natural ventilation and not mechanical ventilation. So they tried to figure out how did they do that. And they ended up with a design which is very similar. But is it a copy or is it an inspiration? So I think we're very open to that. I mean, otherwise we couldn't have done it and put it out all as open as we have. We want to impact the whole industry to, know that you can build with a low footprint, first of all, but also that it's important to think not only about the outside, also the inside of the homes. So that's only good to see, and we hope to see much more. For the concept living places, we work with partners. We have already signed a partner in Holland who would like to be the first in Holland to work with this. And there we give them a head start, so they are able to realize the concept as the first. So we look for pioneers, the ones who would like to do something extra to accelerate the development.
I think a very valid part of our discussion would be also scalability, as this is something that is becoming very popular, especially in architecture. As I've mentioned myself, I'm part of Henning Larsen Architects, and currently at Danish Architecture Center, there is our exhibition, Changing Our Footprint, which is about different materials, which is about hay, which is about biodiversity. And the motive is about how to scale it up, because you can make maybe a very small school in Feldbach school.
Very good school.
In Denmark. Very good school. Thank you. But I think it's maybe around 200 square meters. So how do you make it actually bigger? What does it take? What is VELUX and yours look and take on scalability? Also in correlation to this project, to living places.
Yes, very valid question. By the way, Feldbach, I happen to know the project, and I know it's built with EcoCocoon, which is an industrial product. So that can be scaled. But the question is, and I think everybody in the building industry has to hold up a mirror and think about what is it they deliver. In our case, we know very well what we deliver: daylight and fresh air through the roof, transforming spaces. In the case of sustainable buildings, there are some who are having that as their profession: developers, contractors, and so on. And the question is, what are they delivering? Are they delivering a house, completed, deliver the key, or do they deliver a good life, a good night's sleep? And I think that'll be the change maker when we look ahead. I also have to challenge my own profession. I can include Henning Larsen, but it can also be actually most architect offices. What is it they deliver? Is it always one house to the next house to the next house? Because back to what I said earlier, we're not going to be able to meet the necessary change in the green transition or meet our climate targets if we only go from one project to the next. It has to be very profound and a new approach. And it has to be done in a systemic way, ecosystemic if you want, to see the connection. We do our part with investing in this prototype, and it's not a small investment, but it also has a big effect. So I think it is leveled. And I think everybody will have to do something different. We cannot just keep doing business as usual and then expect things to change.
Talking about self-reflection and looking into the mirror, what are some of the challenges that you met on your own way, and how many failures you faced before creating a project like Living Places?
I like to call it experiences because my engineering colleagues get very frightened if I talk about failures. But you can choose the words as you want. I think architects maybe are more risk willing, where engineers, for good reasons, they have to do bridges and stuff like that, are more risk adverse. I'm also happy about that if I drive over a bridge. So it's a question about meeting the balance. But we have had a lot of experiences from the former demonstration projects we did that has helped us a lot in scoping what we wanted to do here. And a lot of them came from monitoring the buildings in use, which is something that neither architects nor engineers get to do. And I think that's a huge blind spot in the building industry, that there's a lot of assumptions being made by, obviously, architects and engineers in the programming, in the designing phase. But how do they know if it works? It's based on some legislative conditions, some assumptions that may be coming back from an education which may be, at best, not too long ago, but even worse, a long time ago. So it's a bit about developing a conscience and finding out how does what you do actually work, and then having this theory and practice loop. Because here we have had, can't even remember a number, but we've had a lot of learnings. We've done a whole catalog on what didn't work as expected and what would we do different. And this is part of what we share with the Pioneer partners.
So it is inspiring, and especially to challenge the industry. I think that's something that we can agree on, like during this discussion. And especially, I would say that there is a big potential amongst the younger generation and young architects or people that are studying architecture. And that's why I also wanted to talk to you about that and about your background, because it is also about inspiring others. And here I also would like to talk about your approach and your credo about user experience times quality times value. That's what sustainable buildings is. And let's make it difficult. Let's make it the default, not difficult. How is this credo that you have translating into your own work?
That is the single most difficult thing, is that we change to talking price, to talking about quality. There is a famous American investor who's been very successful, who owns a lot of money, Warren Buffett. And he has this saying that price is what you pay, but quality is what you get. Value is what you get. Quality is value. We all have a sense of quality. If you go to the supermarket, you can stand with two different products and you can say, I think this is better. I will pay maybe 10% more because it's the better offer. We have it when we buy clothes. We have it when we eat in restaurants. We have this sense of quality. But we have forgotten it somehow in terms of buildings. I'm not sure exactly why. Maybe it's because it's become very speculative, because it's a commodity to buy your own home, and because it is a big investment. So you want to have something that can be, have a resale value, which is all fully understandable. But I still think that people are not critical enough when it comes to looking at where they sleep. Actually, in your home, you spend more than 60% of your time. And 90% of that time you spend in a bedroom. Why are you not more critical around how good is the air quality? Why don't we have numbers for this? If you go and look at a house or an apartment, why can you not say, show me a number for the indoor quality? I mean, there are sensors, meters. I'm looking at 3 different types here from where I'm sitting. I can go in and I can check it. There are apps. It's all there. So why are people so uncritical and accepting actually really low quality?
But I need to counter that. I agree. I would love to live in the best possible environment. But the housing situation is so pressing in many different cities. In Copenhagen is a great example of that. You need to be very lucky to find housing, and especially good housing. So I think that people are so pressed to find a place to live, basically. It could be for renting, maybe not so much by buying, but for renting especially. Like, there is so much pressure on people on the market that you can't bother to think about the quality of your air because you really want to have a place to sleep.
Of course, it's a basic need. It's Maslow's pyramid. That's the bottom of the pyramid. You need roof over your head. That you have to secure. So I'm talking about some steps which are a little bit further up the pyramid, which a lot of people will face at one point or the other. You can move there and pay that, or you can move there and pay something else. There's a lot of aspects coming into place. Where's the geography, and do you like being in there? But I'm more talking about if you have a choice and you go and look at a new place, a new apartment that you could maybe move into, be critical, because you anyway go into the home. You will not say yes without having been there. You wouldn't rent an apartment without going there.
I wouldn't. We had a situation once. It was my girlfriend visiting, and we've been on video chat, and she was showing me the place, and I just trusted her gut feeling, and we rented it, but I wasn't there before.
But you trusted her.
Yeah. I trusted her.
Yeah. And what part of her did you trust? Was it the gut feeling that she said, yes, it's okay?
Yeah, that she felt good in this place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. And this is something which is so important. Where we live, how we feel connected, how well we feel. It's not about the size of the space or the color of the gypsum board. It's about a lot of other things. It's, of course, also not only about temperature and CO2, but it's an important part of it. And it can make you sick if you're not aware of it. So I'm just basically trying to hope for and suggest that we are more critical as architects and engineers, know more about what we are doing and the effect it has. And then for consumers in general, because if the consumers, we as consumers start asking for it, then the market will pick it up. Currently, real estate agents and developers, they're saying, yeah, but I know what people want. They want what they got yesterday. And that is business as usual. And that is not okay. It's not enough anymore.
I think that was a very good closing thought for the grande finale. And eye-opening as well. It is important because for us who are associated with architectural building industry, it is more obvious that there are some elements that we need to look at. And one of them might be while choosing an apartment, you look at the daylight, you look at the orientation, where the sun will be, and so on. But so this is the message to any one of you listening who is maybe not of an architecture background, but you will be, as you said, Lona, you will be one day having this decision of maybe moving to another place. So think of those aspects, as there are many of them.
That's a big power you have, asking for those things. So yes, can I make a final input?
Yes, definitely.
The book recommendation.
Yes, I was just about to ask for that. You are faster than me.
Sorry, I'm ahead of you. Yes, because there are so many good books there. I have a pile of them on sustainability right now. So, but if I should promote one, it would be by Bent Flubjerg, professor from Oxford. And the title is How to Get Big Things Done. Everything from home renovation to going to the moon. Because it's a matter of having the right mental model when you go towards a project. And I think we need to apply a lot more of this thinking and take it much more seriously. Because in the end, it's about buildings and it's 1/3 of all the carbon emissions and energy consumption. So it matters a lot. So it's quite committing for us who are working in the building industry, such as you are yourself.
I was wondering, where do I know this person from, this author from? And I actually realized that I was recommended this book like 2 weeks ago. So I think that now it's a sign. I need to really buy it now and read it. So thank you for that recommendation. I will also add it into the description of this episode. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for this conversation. It was very inspiring for me, and thank you for inviting me to Living Places. Looking forward to another discussion with another project, or maybe when Living Places will become even bigger.
Yes, next time. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you for listening to this discussion with Lone. I hope that was exciting, that was useful, relevant, inspiring. And if you would like to get to know something more, just check the episode's description for the links. But I'm producing the text version of this discussion, and you will be able to see it and read it on LinkedIn at Urbcast profile there, as well as you can be part of the newsletter that is now having almost 700 followers on LinkedIn. So please join. You will find link in the description of this episode as well. Talk to you soon.